keeping kind of in sync with our digital first approach. We're trying to make them asset light and trying to stay with them throughout their journey. It's not a one shot project and then they're there. It's very much an iteration. Every 3 to 5 years.
Welcome back to another installment of the Next Gen Case Study Series. On today's episode, we have Scott Hulse, who is the Managing Director and co-founder of Digital First Solutions, a company that helps businesses leverage cutting-edge AI technology for marketing strategies and operations. With over 25 years of experience across consulting firms like Deloitte, Capgemini, and IBM, Scott has built a reputation for fostering high-performance teams and delivering innovative solutions in both IT services and consulting. He now focuses on using AI to drive digital transformation for global clients, which is why we're excited to have him on the show. Scott, welcome to the program.
Thanks. Good to be here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get into some of the work that you're doing here. You mentioned off camera that there's kind of four different units of things that you're kind of working on. So I want to explore some of that with you. But before we get too far into it here, Scott, can we start with maybe just a couple of minutes on your background? You know, who you are, where you came from, and how you landed as a co-founder for Digital First Solutions.
Oh, sure. No, I'd be glad to. So I kind of came up through this industry about 25 years ago, and uh, through the course of moving around with a couple of really blue chip firms, found myself an opportunity to retire from one large organization and start to do some things that I'm very passionate about. I joined another as a chief commercial officer and spun that up for about a year. And after that, 3 or 4 colleagues of mine decided to form Digital First, and we're a outsourcing and advisory led firm that really focuses on custom applications, Martech, package applications, and then overall business effectiveness, along with security and more. So to do that, we've got 9 different delivery centers, a syndicate of delivery partners, and really go-to-market product partnerships that fuel our different offerings. I came to be there because it just seems like a natural affinity to what I like to do.
So there was kind of an underlying passion to kind of driving that work, eh?
Yeah, very much. It's interesting when you form a business with a number of colleagues. What you're looking for is that synergy or that complementary capability. And what we found is my strengths and my passions around client growth, around distilling what's possible, and then also around really relationship stewardship and management are really complementary. Where I've got some other partners that are very much delivery focused and help quite a bit in the services aspect, but maybe a little bit more around cost management, where my forte is really around enablement and what's possible. So together we have these different complementary capabilities.
Yeah, it's really cool when when two kind of opposing forces can come together. For example, like a visionary and an integrator, and kind of create something that didn't exist before that solves a really meaningful problem, and then to support that with your own passion, I think really adds the fuel to the fire of your success. When you started out with this whole thing, I got to hear that it was first founded in 2021, and I know that just from my experience in starting businesses, there's this kind of first period of time where you're spending a lot of time wearing multiple hats and taking care of all different kinds of responsibilities. And over time, that role evolves. I wonder if you could share your experience and how your role has evolved over time with Digital First.
Oh, glad to. I had the same conversation with a colleague of mine just a few weeks ago. What happens is at first you think, hey, we're going to set up our own business, and you think how attractive the margin's going to be, and it's going to be lucrative. But very quickly you fall into all the operations, all to make sure you've got the contracts down, your copywritten, you've got everything trademarked, you've got your supply chain down, you've got your marketing focus down, your segments. So you end up very much as kind of being your own advisor, your own consultant to these operations. And then as they start to settle out, some things, there's a natural a nuance to things where some things start to work out better, and other things that you thought were going to be really favorable just don't get any traction. You don't get any pipeline, or there's no traction, or kind of a drag with clients. And so what I found is we're able to evolve in such a way where we get a great synergy on things that we're naturally driven towards. Again, around what's possible in the market, what we're seeing, what's bogus too, what are decoys and fluff out there, and then also finding that my background, whether it's with the contracts or with statements and possibilities with clients, and then articulating that in such a way that's actionable is hugely valuable to put a kind of a roadmap together with clients on terms of what they're trying to achieve and looking at it from their perspective. Whereas some of my partners that are very much, there's a good synergy there, but they don't really bring in as much from a book of business. However, without them, we'd be stranded. Without them, we want to be able to deliver. We'd be kind of limited by our own hours or our own touch labor. So the secret here is really getting that gearing to where we've got scale and we can scale across delivery centers. In fact, even now we're developing a kind of our own IP on a productized version for scale on a category we call security and more that's aimed at fintech in the middle market. We wouldn't be able to do that without the collaboration of a few of our other partners. So that's kind of how it's come together. We certainly didn't start out saying, "Hey, here's where we're going to be, and here's what our roles are going to be." It kind of starts out where everybody's doing everything, and then you have to sort of you kind of find your comfort zone between your different partners.
Yeah, it's almost like you start kind of feeling or getting a feel for what you are naturally good at, where you excel, where you can really focus your energy or your attentions on things. I use this just to your point. There's an analogy of the hungry people. I can go find, 1,000 hungry people, but if I don't have something to feed them, then we're kind of all a bunch of hungry people standing in an empty field.
Yeah.
So you kind of need both of those sides of things to really pull things together. So when you're starting out, the strategy or the go-to-market is much different than when you do finally get some traction and then you can kind of get on a level ground in terms of just the vehicle that's moving you forward. In those early stages, I think what you kind of were alluding to was that there was some of that comes from your network, your experience, the people that you already have in your circle of influence, and eventually that pond will dry up, and then you have to move on and kind of explore other strategies or tactics to kind of bring in more business. So, what did that look like for you guys in terms of the early days of being that scrappy startup, taking whatever you can, and now compare it to what you're doing now and what that kind of marketing funnel looks like for the business.
Yeah, no, that's a spot on, very relevant aspect. What happens is at first, yeah, every deal is a strategic deal. It's a sell deliver model, and you're kind of going off the inertia and the momentum of what you've done before. And so you've got certain things that have worked and certain things that you have a lot of tacit knowledge about. And you try to compartmentalize those into different channels of pipeline and marketing effort. We started out, well, one of our partners has terrific relationships with a variety of niche product companies. So we started out getting some white label product agreements together that were very advantageous for us, even though they were in a category that nobody had really done a lot of. So that's a big hurdle. When you sit down with a client, you talk about something that's great to them, and they say, "Where have you done this?" or "How do we do this?" and you can't answer the question. You realize pretty quickly that that's the wrong thing to do. So we went back to our strengths and we said, "All right, listen, we've got a lot of demand and a large client. We've got one big anchor client that is in our sweet spot that we worked with. We personally worked with some of their competitors before. We know the model, and they're undergoing a lot of change. So we started out really focusing on how do we fortify this on some of these packaged software capabilities, things like ERP from Oracle or what we've got with Salesforce or ServiceNow. So some of these popular brands. And we didn't really have a differentiator with that other than, you get us, we're very flat. You get, a principal on every deal and we're very tied into it. But it wasn't really that defensive. It was almost a commoditized approach. And so we had to come back to the well and think, well, what do we do? Why are we doing this? What's our passion? So that's really the discussion that ignites so many better dialogues internally, where we start to look at, well, wait a minute, that client's trying to do a Martech change, and they've got a heavily funded product or program based on some new software from Adobe and some others. So we kind of pivoted on that. We said, well, we haven't really done that, but we've done a lot of things like that. So we spun up an offering on Martech. We partnered with a group that has 20 or so certified individuals in that kind of new age migration. And suddenly we have a standing and a differentiation to talk about our approach and how we can help that client, as opposed to just being a transaction. So being able to pivot on which offers, I mentioned security and more a few minutes ago, which ones that really resonate in the market today, and also the ones that we can not only deliver on, but be passionate about. And I think that's the big difference. When you've got a closely held firm like this and you've got a lot of capability, if you're not passionate about how it comes across to clients, then, they tune you out. I would do the same thing. So we've got some things that, some might be a little bit commoditized, but by and large, we have very credible standing in our approach, in our delivery skills and capability, and then also our commitment to clients. Everybody talks about an easy contract. That's, to me, that's table stakes. What really matters is being able to deliver and share your client's view on what they're trying to accomplish, and then help them along the way on what to avoid for risk, and then also how to help them be enabled to achieve it. So that sounds like a lot of different ideas that come into place, but that's the kind of dialogue that works with clients because as an executive, that's what you want to hear. You want to hear the end game and how's this going to make our problem go away or make it easier. And again, how's it going to enable them to have more of a differentiation? So we look at ourselves, we've evolved to be very much an enablement firm that has software products, that has product relationships, and we're completely advisory led. So before we give an SOW on staff or outsourcing, we're going to be spending a fair amount of time understanding organization needs. Is it build or buy? Is it something that comes into play where it's not just a security concern, but maybe it's a security and more concern around different aspects of the organization? Um, we tend to stay in our lane. We're typically interfacing with CFO, CIO, and CISO audiences. Yeah, and we found that to be most effective. When we get out of that, when we start to talk with heads of marketing and folks that are chief revenue officers, that's great. And I can certainly have that dialogue. We just don't have a lot of follow up behind it. So we're very mindful of the kind of overall customer lifecycle.
Okay, so a couple of things that I picked up on. The first one that was really clear to me was the commoditized services scenario. And I think
Yep.
about this in a lot of different verticals, like the whole law, legal kind of
Yep.
box, and then doctors or dentists or chiropractors. They all kind of offer the same bunch of things, and then you try to take that bunch of things and tell the world that you do that bunch of things, and now in a space like Google AdWords, for example, everybody's paying for the same set of AdWords. And so it becomes a contest of like who's willing to pay the most to acquire a customer and take the least in the profit. And so there's this thing that nobody's really talking about that's happening in the culture of us marketing to people our products and services, and it's making it worse for everybody. So the thing that you pointed at that I'm really present to is this kind of partnership scenario where, hey, listen, we're just going to join your team and there's maybe no exchange yet in terms of a transaction, right? That we're not charging you for the consultation or for this or for that. However, when the time comes when you want to leverage some of the solutions that we've created, we have an alternative monetization structure that allows us to still be a profitable company and serve you in a way that is, I'll call it unique and novel. Is that kind of accurate to what you were describing?
Yeah, this relationship based kind of giving away, not really giving away, investing in understanding a client, and conversely, they understand us better, is a much more intrinsically, it's a much more effective way to go into a delivery relationship or a business contract. And it's not so much investing and giving it away up front. It's investing in an understanding with the client, and then it might be a case where they ask for things that we can't do. And that happens a lot. They'll say, oh, I understand what you like. What about something off the books? And we try to not do that because that just takes away our key resources away from our focus. But in terms of trying to understand with client what's relevant there, and then also thinking about from where they want to go and in terms of maturity, in terms of process, in terms of capability, being very objective with that, we kind of earn our ability to have that standing with the client. And to me, that's the most important asset we have is that client asset of relationship. So after that, the delivery aspects, I think they're pretty straightforward. We see a lot of competition when we submit an RFP or a bid to an RFP from folks that are really just paying on price or well, not laurels or where they've done it somewhere else. We try not to do that. We try to really understand the client's issue, problem we're solving, and break it into a way that the client likes to buy.
Makes sense. So that leads me to a different pathway here. When it comes to that long-term ongoing nurturing of a client, does that lead to a longer sales cycle for you guys?
Yeah, let me explain this because I don't think it's well documented on our website or our media. Essentially, the customer life cycle for services is typically uh, design, build, and run. That's a life cycle. They design what it's going to be, they build it, they test it, they roll it out, then they run it. They run the business for 3 to 5 years. A lot of professional services firms have that exact approach, and they might specialize in one or two or three of those parts. What we've done is we've elevated that and shifted it to the left a little bit. We start with IT strategy. What are they trying to accomplish? The strategy around it. What's the risk? What are the pitfalls? What's available in the market? What are the options? What are they trying to address? And really drill down on that from a business problem aspect as well as a possible series of solutions. And then when they say, well, we've already kind of committed to going this one route with a package, or we're trying to refortify how we go to market with these segments or what have you. Then we get into that design, build, run aspect, which we've done that by front ending it with the client's kind of guidance and through their lens. And that way, by starting with IT strategy, and IT strategy has a lot of different components. We've got cloud strategy, we've got application strategy, we've got go to market, we've got segmentation, we've got conversions, we've got tools on all those. We mentioned about tools before, whether it's CRM tools and pipeline management and conversions, or sometimes it can be really just as fundamental as how effective is their channel in terms of moving their product or service. And sometimes that's an issue where it breaks down on they've got go-to-market personnel that are trained the wrong way or not aligned with everybody else. Or it could be an IT environment as well, like I mentioned. But by starting with IT strategy first, we really are setting the table to understand the client in a more long-term perspective. So we're trying to avoid the short burst projects of, I mean, we'll do a 6-week project, but we try to avoid saying, hey, we're going to come in for 2 or 3 months or buy this staff for a year, retain capacity on staff augmentation. We try to not do that because we're not adding a lot of value other than availability.
Right. And then to couple that with the ongoing having a client for a longer period of time versus that kind of one-off transaction thing. You kind of reminded me of Simon Sinek's Infinite Game. And this is just a different way of thinking, like shifting the mindset away from that transactional nature of, hey, you're a client, here is the product that you're purchasing or service. We have now completed that, and off you go. Versus, hey, listen, you are a company that's going to be here for a very long time. Technology is going to advance, it's going to evolve, it's going to change. And so it would be advantageous to have somebody partnered with you to help you through those evolutions so that you don't get left behind, so you don't have any vulnerabilities in terms of security, or if new products are come out or there's new opportunities, you can create new revenue streams. So there's a lot of like ongoing tinkering now that I get a sense is happening with your clients. Is that true?
Yeah, I think that's very accurate. It comes back there are a lot of organizations that are project companies that want to go out, do implementations, and then go away. And we want to avoid that. We look at retention on a customer life cycle that goes on for quite a while and kind of grows or evolves. It's the same dialogue that you have when you look at a run the business or managed services perspective of the client versus come in and put this new shiny object or project in and then go away. So we look at ourselves not so much as the plumbers and managed service folks, but very much as the architects to help them steward different decisions in that journey. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the market and as much as cloud has been saturated, there's still 70% of organizations that have to move their data off-prem. They're still trying to get on cloud. On some large packages, they still have 70 or 80% on-prem and they're trying to move to cloud. So we've got an offering all around cloud migration and efficiency and optimization. Our real passion is enterprise apps and how that is established from a buy versus build perspective and all the redundancy there. And then, I mentioned security and more. That's an outstanding capability where there's a whole composite application that we built, are building, that calls on different specialists across the security landscape that a end user client doesn't need to know all the nuts and bolts. They just need to sign into this platform. They can quickly tap what's in for them. They have their own tenancy and their own version of each one of these tools, and it's rendered right to them. They make it very easy, and that's in keeping kind of in sync with our digital first approach. We're trying to make them asset light and trying to stay with them throughout their journey. It's not a one shot project and then they're there. It's very much an iteration, every 3 to 5 years.
Okay, so it's really clear to me that you have over your tenure here have established a very clear pipeline, a very clear funnel, a very clear pathway for new business to come into your company. And so, with that, what what's the big goal? What is the kind of North Star? What's guiding this? What are you guys aiming at in terms of the big outcomes that you want for the business?
So it's really a couple things because we evolve and we don't know what's going to come about next year or the year after. We plan for, but things happen. Yeah, what we've been able to do is harness kind of this project mentality into a strategic framework where we have kind of a strategy led or advisory led approach. We really tailor our market around high tech and retail clients, principally on the West Coast. And we do that because we're focused with our offices in Seattle, the Bay Area, and Sacramento. And so what's next as we have these mature offerings is we're able to go upstack even more and be a little bit more of a third party intermediary or advisor to help clients retain work from large outsourcing contracts or other vendors. And there are a few firms in the market that I met with before that are modeled after kind of a law firm structure or a legal firm structure. Um, we can get there, but I think what we're probably going to see is a introduction of digital first advisors or DFA that will be doing this very thing. And I think that's kind of the evolution that we see, where we can take some of the resources and insights from digital first advisors, apply that back into digital first solutions in our clients, and have sort of again more synergy on thought leadership and capabilities back to our clients.
So what sorts of challenges or bottlenecks do you think you'll encounter along the way, and what's your strategy to kind of overcome some of those things?
Oh no, that's a great question because from a delivery perspective, when we have scope creep, it's not a bad thing to have because we just build more hours around it and help the client. But the reality is we can't have scope creep in this. We have to be a little bit locked down and be able to pivot and adjust. So as I was describing digital first advisors around kind of a life cycle journey into AI and the cloud and what we're doing for automation, that might change a little bit. It might be very specific. You might have retail operations and um, you know, all point of sale operations in distributed franchisings, for example, that we see in retail. That could pick up its own inertia in quick serve restaurants and all the metrics around that. We're in California, and of course, the wine industry is a big hub here in the U.S. in Napa Valley, and they've got their own ecosystem as well. Napa Valley is about 90 miles north of where I'm sitting, and it's remarkable. They had 25 years ago, there were about, I believe his number was about 40 to 50 wineries, and now it's 400 to 500. A lot, just this massive growth in terms of
That's
same
crazy.
space. Yeah, exactly. So they get a lot of affinity in terms of what they're trying to do from a retail or front office perspective that we can help them with. And those are almost always privately owned businesses. They can be significant, but they're always privately held. Also, I see a lot in terms of speaking of privately held. I see a lot in terms of private equity and venture capital, where we can help these fostering these kind of these the portfolio companies that they have, and do that in a way that gives them an advantage on kind of leveraged pricing and visibility. So things like that I'm excited about. The things that we have to stay away from is the scope creep, where somebody comes in with a new idea, and I hear some crazy ideas that come across things around international stuff on insurance that we're a fish out of water or something where we're just not. It's not a good use of our resources. So being a little bit more disciplined on that's probably our biggest hurdle we've got to safeguard against.
Yeah, it's tough because on one hand, you want to create a really remarkable experience for the clients that you work with so that they'll talk about you. But then on the other hand, it's you still have to be able to support the team and generate an income and make sure that all the books are balanced out. So uh I guess a balancing act that a high wire balancing act that you're teetering on when you go down that path. When you're kind of going down some of these avenues, what do you look for to help you measure whether or not something is working? Like what looks like success and what looks like failure, and how do you adjust course as you kind of encounter some of these?
Yeah, I look at it as two categories. First category is a going concern is how's our book of business and our retention rate, and how's our margin doing in that book of business. We have a target floor margin we usually go in at, and we look for growth on that margin. We look for um, things that fall off or run off from that particular book of business and see how healthy it is. So we kind of keep a good eye on that as something kind of as a kind of a thing as a gauge on how we're doing as a going concern.
Hmm.
The other one that I think is very exciting is the new stuff that we bring in, how passionate we are, how much transferable enthusiasm and how accurate it is. I mean, we don't get excited. I don't get excited about a lot of things, but some things I really do. I mentioned this composite architecture that we're building. I see that as just a remarkable thing that we can bring about. I think we can do add a service as a springboard to clients, and we don't need to have 500 people writing in or a large national firm to do it. Um, on things that we want to pursue that are kind of the shining point or things that are exciting, they're relevant. They're not necessarily big margin makers. Yeah, I've seen this many times. We'll make 95% of our margin in our business off of things that we do well, but don't really make the papers unless we fail, right? So they're kind of subtle in the background. But that other 5% that we lead with, that sizzle, that excitement, that's what makes us different. That's what we own. That's what we are passionate about. And that's what clients want to hear. I mean, I get called in meetings because I'm passionate about a topic and how we've seen it done, both at Digital First, as well as large firms that I've been, had the opportunity to be part of in the past. So, leadership teams in some very terrific places. And at Digital First, we don't need their brand, but we do have this kind of their approach. That's how I look at it. So keep the going concern stable, but don't forget about the 5%. That's where the difference is at.
Yeah, that bread and butter, I think is that's the big part of it. I heard somebody say a long time ago the 80/20 rule, which is 80% of your revenue is going to come from 20% of the work that you do. And so it's important to kind of focus on that 20% just to make sure that things are continue to churn. And then on the other side, like you said, it's that sizzle, right? Give them the razzle tazzle and make sure that what you're offering still is in line with what the general hype is, right?
Yeah, I had a client. No, we had a client that had 40% of their pipeline was on these discovery deals that was taking up over half their resources. And their idea, counter to the 80/20 rule, was, hey, if we land a bunch of these, then they'll grow and we're going to do great. But the problem is that they'll never come because they're taking down too many, they're consuming too many of the resources. So
Mm.
you've got to have either an 80/20 rule, or I'd say, you've got three large anchor clients by offering. And then in addition to that, you've got to be monitoring that. So, even though you've got concentration in 20, you've got a smaller 20% of your clients are creating all this revenue. The new stuff that you're bringing in, that sizzle, is vastly important. Previously, we would always refer to this as the wrapper. Kind of the wrapper of services might be around apps modernization, might be around cloud. Now it's around AI and robotics, and these things have been around for a while. But to make them tangible and to see how clients can benefit from these, not just on delivery and cost reduction, but on enablement and actual analytics and big data, that is tremendous. That is a game changer for clients. Now they don't have to, again, 95% of their spend is going to be in things that'll be a little bit more routine. But that 5% is, that's a big difference maker. So I agree, it is an 80/20, but you've got to have that sizzle in there. Otherwise you have a hard time differentiating yourself.
Right. Yeah, you got to have something special to get people through the door, I think is what you're
Yeah.
pointing at. Yeah. Uh, Listen, Scott, this has been great. We're kind of coming to a close of our time together here, and I'd love to leave this on a high note if I could. Um, Imagine that there's somebody out there who's trying to build something for themselves, who's just out there, trekking through it, maybe facing some challenges. What sort of advice might you offer somebody like that to kind of help them keep going?
Well, first off, I appreciate the time today, but let me answer the question. if somebody's out there, they're thinking, I don't know, I think I'm inspired by this. The first question is there a fire or a hunger in your psyche around doing something that not only do you own, but you have a passion for, and it's like you've got a secret you want to share. If you have a passion like that and it can scale, the other thing is don't try to do everything on your own. Individual entrepreneurs, I see a lot of these in Silicon Valley, and the challenge is they can't scale. So if you can take a little bit of time to identify where your weaknesses are, and then seek out some colleagues that share your vision, that don't have the same weaknesses, then you might have a syndicate of people that can come together, so you get a lot of synergy to make that a real opportunity, and also to make those tangible ideas on the whiteboard something that clients want to buy, or at least understand and share the journey with. So I would say don't be deterred if if you're sitting there and you're thinking, hey, it's just me and I don't know how to scale this. We have a lot of passionate people in our industry. The challenge is always how do we integrate together, and that's what I've found to be the biggest area of growth for me. That's what I'd recommend.
Really powerful advice. Scott, you've been very generous with your time and your wisdom, and on behalf of everybody watching and listening, I'm very grateful for that. If somebody wanted to reach out to you to pick your brain further or perhaps work with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Oh, it's easy. So our website is digitalfirstllc.com, or they can also contact me directly at same surname. It's Scott at digitalfirstllc.com. That's my direct email. I'd welcome any messages that come my way. Thank you.
Wonderful. We'll make sure to link to that in the show notes so that anybody watching or listening can reach out to you easily. And on that note, if you want to get in touch with me and my team for any of your marketing or AI needs, you can visit nextgengrowth.com. Otherwise, that's it for this episode. Thanks for joining us for this conversation, and I will see you in the next.